That was around the time that lavender became like a massive signifier for
Lavender Haze, Taylor Swift.
Oh my god, so true.
Yeah.
Loki, do you think Taylor Swift is kind of fruity or no?
Yeah, it's crossed my mind.
Like,
Hello, welcome back to Sextras,
where we talk about sex and all the extras.
I'm Honey.
And I'm Maria.
And today we are in honour of it being Lesbian Visibility Week. We're doing a episode about like realising you're lesbian and compulsory heterosexuality. And we're really excited about it. So
yeah, I feel like we've talked about being bi a lot, being gay with our friend Will and like with Kabir, but we've yet to talk about lesbians, and what better time to do it than Lesbian Visibility Week. Here's a shout out to all the lesbians out there,
to all our lesbian friends.
love our lesbians,
love you. Literally love you, like date us, well date me. So we kind of wanted to just talk about like compulsory heterosexuality more broadly and talk about like how it obviously affects everyone, how it affects women, and then how it affects lesbians, and then how that affects like figuring out that you're a lesbian. And then we're also going to be joined by a few of our lesbian / questioning friends / guests. And yeah, they're going to tell us about their experience. So we're excited. Let's get into it.
Yeah.
So should we kind of like explain what compulsory heterosexuality is for people who don't know?
Take it away.
So it's basically what it says, like the idea of like compulsory, like something that is forced into you or like forced onto you by society, and then heterosexuality, which is like obviously being attracted to the opposite gender or sex or whatever, which as we know in itself is literally just like made up. So it's so stupid that attraction to like the opposite is even a thing that we're forced into. But it's just like the idea that like being straight is the default, and like we're sold this kind of like normalcy around opposite sex couples and like what that lifestyle looks like, and that all attraction should kind of fit into that, and anything outside of that is taboo or like wrong or like not real.
So is it kind of like heteronormativity, or is it more nuanced?
Yeah, it's kind of the same thing, I feel like.
To me, it kind of just sounds like a different way to talk about it, in a way that's more like, because compulsory and normativity have like different connotations, I guess. So it kind of just paints a different picture of a similar thing that's going on, maybe.
Yeah. I think it's kind of all like from the same root, essentially, which is like, yeah. Anyway.
Got it. So basically the concept that like the normal thing and the standard thing and the thing that everyone should do, in inverted commas, should, is be attracted to the opposite sex, right? And like the system in which we live is made for that, essentially.
Yeah, but also just like that everyone is that. It kind of clouds all other options in a way of like,
right.
When you're growing up, you don't think like, oh, maybe like I'm attracted to someone, like to a girl. You just think, oh, it's just a phase or whatever, or like that's not a real thing. You don't even know that that's an option.
Got it.
And then because of like all of the films that you watch, and like basically every question you're asked growing up, you basically don't even consider that like your feelings are valid. And then so realizing that you're a lesbian is kind of like something that you have to go through to like get to. It's not just something that you just are like born with the knowledge of.
Got it, right.
Or like socialized with the knowledge of, which is why it can be so difficult for like some people to realize that they're a lesbian. And like compulsory heterosexuality especially affects women. Obviously, like everything else, it's harder for women to like realize these things because women are told way more than men in general, like this is what you should be, and like attraction to men in every circumstance is kind of the default. So like and it goes back to like, sorry, not to go on just like a rant about it, but like it goes back to like the Victorian era when being gay, like a man having sex with a man, like sodomy, was criminalized, but it wasn't criminalized for women because they didn't even think that women would like stoop that low. Like they didn't even think that women would do that. So yeah, it was just completely like invisible. So yeah, do you want to say anything about that?
What I was kind of thinking about is just that it reminded me of sort of like conversations that we've had. I guess because it's all societal, but like conversations that we've had like about the male gaze and sort of like things that, you know, like being kind of like, okay, trying to be introspective about it, and almost like when you're being introspective and being like, oh, maybe I am into girls, and then being like, oh, no, but like that's silly, you know, that's kind of what made me think of it, like, oh, like I'm doing this against the male gaze, but then like, oh, are you doing it against the male gaze, or like is that further perpetuating the male gaze? I don't know, how it just made me think how like it's like a little bit of a trap, like an introspective and like societal trap, really.
Yeah, and I think it also talks a lot about like the whole concept of compare, I'm just going to call it that from now because it's way easier, is basically like the idea of forcing yourself to like a man because that's what society tells you should do, like regardless of like listening to yourself and like whether you actually are attracted to men and whether you actually do enjoy dating them. Because I think the thing about, so basically we should explain, there's this thing called the lesbian masterdoc. If you're on like, if you were ever on Tumblr and you're on TikTok, you probably know about it because every queer woman has seen something about it online. And essentially it kind of dispels the myth of liking men and like asks all of these questions to like figure out whether you're a lesbian and whether you actually like men. Because I think a lot of the time, like, and all people who are attracted to men are probably guilty of this, again because of like how we're socialized and like the fairy tales that we see in like rom-coms and films or whatever, and like what a straight couple looks like is nothing like what it looks like in real life, as we all know. So yeah, and it asks all these questions like, do you, or it states all these like scenarios like, do you find yourself like wanting attention from men, but when you actually get it you're like repulsed by it, or like different kind of variations on that. So yeah, we'll link that obviously in the episode notes if you want to go check it out. But I was just rereading it this morning because like every time I read it I'm like, whoa, like this is too much for me.
Yeah, so I was wondering like whether you could say some of the stuff that like comes up, or like examples or things that like you and yourself are like, oh, maybe I'm a lesbian.
Yeah, well I feel like we should clear up kind of like the journey that I've had. I think I've talked about it in other episodes, but like obviously at the start of the podcast I was like, I'm bi, like, and I always kind of identified as bi. But I feel like now I identify more as like queer than bi, just because like I don't know, it just makes more sense. Also I think because like I'm not having sex, I'm not dating anyone, and I'm in such a like questioning phase in my life, I don't know why queer just feels more right. But also I don't really feel the need to like put a label on it because no one really ever asks me. I think everyone just assumes that I am queer.
But on the like, you haven't really been dating people and stuff, I feel like there's like, well, I don't know, I've heard from, you know, women, like older women. I'm literally just thinking of 2 different memoirs that I've listened to, but
You've heard.
I've heard like but okay, that's still like 2, you know, and like I have heard something along these lines from other people as well, and like in shows and stuff, like, you know, a period of like celibacy or like needing to like stop dating men because like I'm thinking about Dolly Alderton right now, but you know, like how she went on this celibacy period because she was like, yeah, like I don't know what the fuck I'm doing, like what I want and like what I necessarily like want from men and like what I'm trying to like get from men that I shouldn't be trying to get from them, you know, and like the
Yeah.
disappointment and all of that shit. So like to me it like makes a lot of sense that in a period that you haven't been like sleeping with men or like seeing men or women, like, you know, that is like you've had more time to really be like, okay, is this actually even what I want? Like, what am I actually getting out of these interactions? And is that
Yeah.
actually like what I want moving forward? Or is which is why I brought it up. Like, I feel like when people go through these celibacy periods, they have these realizations of like, yeah, this isn't what I want. Like, what was I doing all of that, you know?
Yeah, I feel like that has happened for me because like, okay, updates guys, it's been 14 months since I had sex. And like, yeah, I do think that it has kind of made me have like higher standards of like who I am gonna have sex with, if I like who I next have sex with, but just because it's been so long, it's like, well, I'm not just gonna have sex with anyone. So then because of that, it's made me kind of reflect on like my past interactions with men and like what I've actually gotten out of them, and like, is that really what I want from my life? And like, not that can never happen again, like not that I can never have a fulfilling sexual relationship with a guy again, or romantic relationship. I think like something that I've really realized is like, am I just gonna wait around for that to happen? And that's such a like compet thing, is like thinking, oh, but like, you know, I'll meet one guy like one day and he will fulfill the idea of what I want from a man, or like fulfill the idea that I've been sold for a man. And like, that's just not true. That's probably never gonna happen. And like, I don't want to just wait around and be disappointed by men. So yeah, that I kind of like try to limit my interactions with men quite a lot, and I don't think that really means anything, but, or like it could, but I don't know if I'm like quite ready like at that point. Yeah, so then I think I've been like really romanticizing dating a woman because of that, which has been kind of like an interesting turn of events of my celibacy. But yeah, it's made me realize like all the positives to dating a woman, and I feel like it's really changed my mindset about it, because like obviously since my first relationship that was with a woman was so toxic, I feel like it's quite nice to just have this period of introspection to be like, okay, but like there are so many like potential pros that can come from it. So yeah.
And I mean, you have always said, like, not always, but like, I think we've had conversations on the podcast that you've been like, I would never want to live with a man. And like the thought of, so I mean, it makes sense to me.
Yeah, I don't want to live with a man. I don't want to end up with a man. Like all of these things, like in the lesbian masterdoc, it's like, okay, well, this could be a sign. But then I'm like, I also don't want to like not honor myself by kind of like ignoring bisexuality, because I also feel like that's something that can get lost. I mean, I don't want to make the episode about bisexuality because that's not what it's about. It's more about like figuring out your sexuality. But I do think sometimes bisexuality can get ignored in like the binary of sexuality as well, of like gay or straight. And I think it's okay to like feel those things. But then also a lot of lesbians realize they're a lesbian after coming out as bi, so it's like, you know, it's obviously just different for everyone. And I think that's why knowing about compulsory heterosexuality is kind of helpful, because it helps you kind of dispel whether you are actually interested in men, and like whether that means you're a lesbian or bi or whatever. It just like helps you get some clarity of like your own attraction, regardless of like what society says. So yeah, anyway, what about you? I mean, like, how do you feel like compet has kind of like influenced the way you date men and the way you perceive men?
I mean, like, yeah, probably, most definitely. I mean, I literally like did not like, oh my god, I'm like the blueprint for like a little straight girl, you know, like when I was young, like before I turned 14, and like all of my hopes and dreams of life and everything. And because I grew up in such a patriarchal, heteronormative society
Mm.
and like environment, you know, before I moved to London, that like, yeah, to me it's like, yeah, baby, like that's my future. I'm gonna be a mama, like never like not even planning on getting a degree, nothing, like in my head, you know, like that's what was gonna happen. Marry a man, have the like little picket fence life. But yeah, and then when I kind of like started liking girls, like it was never like, I don't know, to me it like really like never felt like a rebellion or anything, like it kind of just happened, you know. And then when like that was going on, like I saw myself like fully, like there were times and periods that I was like, oh my god, like I could never like date men again, like for real. And then, you know, that comp het like drags you back.
Yeah.
And I think we have touched on it before, but like I think parts of it is also why it's like why is it so much easier to it's not even like, you know, just the like, I guess it's compulsory not only in like an internal way in the way you feel, but just like the way everything is set up is so much
Yeah.
easier, you know, like it's so much easier to shag a guy than it is a girl. We've talked about that before, you know, like there's just all these aspects of life that you just like kind of like let you slot back into that.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm sorry, and then just go back to like that point where I was like, yeah, I feel like I could like actually be fully gay. There was always this like little thing in the back of my head that was like almost like a fear of like, oh my god, what if I actually do end up with a woman? Like that can't happen. Like in the back of my mind, I always saw myself like walking down the aisle to a man, even if like outwardly and like day to day, I really didn't feel like, you know, like I was like very much like just attracted to girls and like not men. But I don't know, like it's like really within me, like that like walking down the aisle moment. I don't know.
No, yeah, and I think that's why such a lot of lesbians kind of like have that like stopover to bisexuality of like there is that such an emotional barrier of like, what if I am fully gay? Like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
It's like, well, you're already like halfway there, baby. Like, might as well just be you know what I mean? Not that like bisexuality doesn't exist, but like, I don't know, I think it's such an interesting thing of like, you need to have the validation of liking men or like have the validation of men liking you to feel like a whole person. And like, I don't know, I think that can be really damaging because like everything we've learned about romance and attraction is, well, this is how you flirt with a guy, this is what happens on the first date with a guy, this is what happens after 5 dates, and this is what happens like a year into a relationship. And like I think that leaves a lot of room for toxicity in the queer world of like people just don't know how to have relationships with someone. People don't know how to flirt. Like that comes up so much. I don't know how the fuck to flirt with a girl. No clue. Because when I try to imagine what it looks like, I'm like, is that not just like being a friend? Or like, oh no, I don't know, what if they don't feel the same way, or what if they don't recognize it, or you know, all these things. Whereas with a guy, I don't really know, but like I know how to pretend how to flirt with a guy. Like I can picture what it should look like.
Okay, something that's just coming up in my head that is like, I really don't know how helpful it is really, but when you think about it, it's like such a like double-edged sword, because we complain about like this whole representation, like non-representation kind of idea, because okay, we get fed this like idea of love and relationships and like heterosexual, like the perfect love fed down our throats day in day out, right? So then we like complain about, yeah, and then we're like told like this is the way it's meant to be, and like this like gets this idea in our heads. But then like in a way in queer relationships, like there's, because of that lack of like a blueprint, there's also this kind of like huge freedom to it, right? That you can't have. I think that's problematic in both that it like normalizes that kind of love so much that then if you don't fall within it, you're like, oh my God, like what's wrong with me? But then if you just look at it from a different perspective of like, yeah, I'm different and I can like, how lucky am I? You know, I can like make my own idea of this.
Yeah.
So I don't know, it's like kind of problem, but then I also see how like it's problematic to not have representation of like queer relationships and like the history of that and like the erasure of lesbianism and gayness and like all of those subcultures that have existed all the time. It's just like no one gives a fuck and it's not documented, so, or it's like ostracized, so like
Yeah, and we should be able to like recognize those feelings when they come up rather than being like, no, but like no one else is like that, so it can't be me. And like a lot of like personal invalidation going on and stuff. So yeah, I don't know, I feel like I feel so like proud of people. Not that like literally anyone cares what I think about them, but like I don't know, just when I think about people who are like so confidently gay or like lesbian or whatever, like how the recognition that must have like gone into that, and like not just like the societal barriers, but I'm sure like all the personal barriers as well, like people's families, and yeah, like it's a whole load of stuff. But I also think we're like in a generation where having to put a label on stuff is like not necessary, and yeah, I think it's good that we have that freedom, but it's still like a long way off what it should be. So yeah, anyway, having said that, should we talk to our friendies about their experiences?
Yeah, definitely. Like, I'm very curious to what they'll have to say about this actually being lesbians, and you know,
Yeah.
maybe it like really isn't that deep. Maybe like literally they're like, yeah, men are disgusting. Why would I ever be attracted to that? Obviously, like, woman was the way.
Yeah, because I
But
think
we'll
there's
see.
like a few stages, right? There's like some people that are like, okay, I'm definitely gay, like not even a question. There's some people that are like, I could be, but I have also liked men at some point. And then there's people who are still like at the beginning of their journey. So yeah, we're gonna hear from a few of those different stages, and hopefully this will be helpful to anyone who's questioning, and hopefully celebrate the importance of telling lesbian stories. So yeah, hope you guys enjoy. Guys, thank you so much for joining us. We're going to talk a little bit about everyone's journey to coming to terms with their sexuality. So does everyone want to introduce themselves?
I'm Dani.
I'm Cassie.
I'm Emily.
Thank you so much for joining us, guys.
Because I feel like we should like give our qualifications. You know what I mean? Like I feel like we should be like,
oh my god, yeah, give
"Hi,
your gay qualifications.
my name's Cassie. Like I'm a lesbian, veteran, been a lesbian for years. Like you know,
I have a
qualified.
PhD in lesbianism.
7 years experience, deep in the trenches of lesbianism.
What are your qualifications?
3 years, no, like 4 years of lesbianism and a year of bisexuality ? But actually probably less than like a few months of bisexuality.
It feels like active duty, doesn't it?
Yeah, I'm doing my charity work.
Emily, what are your qualifications?
Like 6 years straight, and then like 5 years a lesbian.
For context, Dani and Emily are dating and they have been for about 6 months. Emily's just moved abroad and Dani is on my master's course. So we're doing a 3-way call between London, where me, Cassie and Dani are recording, Maria in Paris and Emily in Spain. So sometimes the audio is a little bit questionable, so apologies for that in advance. Anyway, back to the regularly scheduled programming.
Sexuality is a spectrum, you know. It's fluid.
I feel like your sexuality is just purely based on the people you've met, you know.
That's a good point.
Do you
I
know
think that, yeah.
Can you
I
imagine,
actually
like-
think that's kind of true.
Like low-key, loads of
True.
the girls that I went to secondary school with, are like the majority of the girls that I went to secondary school with are now bisexual, and I genuinely think it's because like most Irish men are really, really unattractive. And like I said, I would love
Don't get.
Don't even talk to me about Paul Mescal.
No.
Also, Paul Mescal is like, he's like from Dublin. Like, that's the most unattractive shit you could ever do. Like,
From Dublin.
literally, like, no, like, absolutely not. Like, I'm from the south. Like, that is so embarrassing.
Okay, but anyway, coming back to this whole like who you're attracted to is like who you know at the time. Did you guys have like one person who made you realize you were attracted to girls?
No. I'm gonna be totally honest with you. I think it's men that made me realise that I'm not. I think it was more like I had a realisation that I just I didn't enjoy like my relationships with men. Like I fully thought my whole teenage experience that like I hadn't met the right man, or just everyone was lying. Like I didn't think that anyone had romantic feelings towards men. I thought they were all just bigging it up and chatting shit. Like that was fully my experience. And then like the first time that then I would just be weirdly obsessed about times that like I'd gotten with girls on nights out and stuff. And then the first time I actually got a crush on a girl, I was like, I just want to be you so intensely, but also like I think about you 24/7. Like, do you know what I mean? It was so bad. And then I was like, wait, fuck, maybe that's what they were talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, I should have come to that realization earlier, but yeah, it wasn't to do with women. It was to do with men.
Okay.
No, I had crushes on girls like since I was like 4. Like since I remember, like that's the first crush that I remember. Is like I was like 4 and it was in primary school, and I had this crush on this girl. But even though that happened throughout like my entire like up until teenage years, whatever, I never actually realised that made me queer. Like I was like, every time it happened, I was like, it's probably a phase. It's probably like everyone feels like this. I was like, everyone gets crushes on girls. And then it wasn't until I had a crush on a girl in like 6th form, and it was quite a serious crush, that I was like, I think I actually like her. And then I was like, that makes me not straight. Like that makes me not one of the heterosexuals.
Gaslighting yourself is so real. I feel like every queer woman that I know has fully gaslit themselves into thinking that like I can't be attracted to women. This is just like girl crush type of thing. Because all girls say that. Like all girls are like, I could definitely fall in love with a woman, and like, no, you couldn't. Like if you are straight, you actually couldn't though. Do you know what I mean?
I know. That does fuck me a bit.
Yeah. Wait, Emily, what about you?
Yeah, I think that the same as Cassie, really. Like I just didn't like men. I just like they repulsed me, so I was like, hang on, something's not quite right here. And that kind of I had like a fair few boyfriends like when I was a teenager, and I was like, oh, maybe the next one, maybe this one will be good, and maybe I'll enjoy it and I'll be attracted to him. And then it never really happened, so I was like, okay, let's try with a woman. And then it was like, boom, like I'm fucking gay.
Yeah, but even with the thing of like your sexuality is informed by who you've met before, I low-key feel like I would have been fruity no matter what, like no matter where I was.
Yeah, same.
That's kind of the difference between like bisexual and like lesbian, because like I don't feel like no matter where I lived, no matter who I had like loved, no matter who I'd had feelings for, no matter what kind of woman there was around, do you know what I mean? I'd fall in love with like someone who was like female in some type of way, or like sapphic in some type of way. Like it would just happen, you know?
Yeah. So was it like kind of easy for you to realize that you were fully gay, or like what was the experience like?
I think like honestly, because I originally came out as bisexual, as everyone does.
Classic.
Yeah. And I low-key didn't really believe myself. I kind of started telling people that I was bisexual, but like I didn't really believe it. I was just kind of like, yeah, probably. Do you know what I mean? But
it was teaser. It's an actual thing.
Big news coming.
Yeah, exactly. Like I very much presented it to everyone as like, oh, I'm just like curious or like questioning or whatever. And then, to be honest, it was my first like emotional trauma from a woman. I was like, okay, well, I would not be this like, destroyed if this wasn't a real thing. And then after I'd had my first relationship with a woman, I was like, I can never go back again. The idea of being with a man makes me feel physically ill. And like, it was like the idea of like my future as well. Because like, I don't know if you think the same way about labels, but I've always thought that like, I pick a label and then like I stick to it unless I meet someone and then it changes. Do you know what I mean? It's like a placeholder for the time being. So I always kind of thought like, yeah, I'm a lesbian, but like, you know, like I'm open to that changing in the future. But like, no, because when I think about my life, if I ever come home from work when I'm like 55 years old, I'm tired, and I just like want to have a nice dinner, and I walk in and there's like a man sat on my couch, like that is hell. That is living hell. And that's nothing to do with sex. That's nothing to do with like what good a partner he is. That's literally just like, I just can never picture my life with like my life partner being a man. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Such a good point.
I get that.
Yeah. I mean, it was kind of weird because I went to all girls school from when I was literally 5 to 18. So I think it was easy to get crushes on girls, but there was a very heteronormative vibe. Like, it wasn't like people had girlfriends and it was like normal to be queer. It was like everyone was straight and everyone talked about boys. And so I think for a long time I kind of just like sidelined it. And then when I was with my girlfriend in sixth form, we were like the only queer couple, and like everyone knew that we were like lesbian couple, and everyone was like, "Oh my god, you guys are so cute!" But it was like a bit weird.
Yeah.
So I just felt like that environment made it a bit strange to sort of realise what my sexuality was.
Did you know any like gay, like lesbian couples growing up, or like did you have any kind of?
No.
That's kind of crazy that you didn't when you were at an all-girls school, because I feel like everyone who I know who went to all-girls school, there was more gays in all-girls schools.
It was it was also a Catholic school, so I don't know if that, and in Jersey, so very like small group. Yeah, my mum had like one lesbian friend when I was growing up, and apparently my mum confessed to me recently that when I was like 5, she confided in her like, I think Dani might be a lesbian, and she was like, no. Apparently my mum's always known. Yeah, I know. He said it's because I used to put up pictures of girls all over my walls, and I'd never wanted to put up pictures of boys. Like, I never wanted pictures of boys.
Love that.
Yeah.
Emily, what about you?
It took me a while to kind of come to terms with it. Like, I kept it to myself for a really long time, maybe like 5 years. And I knew that I was really, I was pretty sure I was gay. I wasn't really sure. And I came out to my mum when I had a boyfriend at the time, and I just told her, like, I like girls. She was the first person I told. And I don't know, it was just kind of traumatic. Like, it always, I think most people have this where you're coming to terms with it yourself, and then you're nervous to come out. I mean, I'm not sure. I don't know about you guys. Like, were you was it a traumatic experience coming out for you, or was it like difficult dealing with, coming to terms with it in your own head? Because I found that extremely difficult when I was younger, and only now am I completely comfortable. But yeah, I'm just curious if other people have that as well.
What about it made it so like uncomfortable and like so difficult?
I think it's simply because I just felt kind of ashamed by it initially. I was like, I didn't know any lesbians. My family were like, I love my family and they're so supportive and amazing now, but they used to say kind of homophobic things and stuff, like most of my family did, and it made me feel really like, okay, I can't tell anyone. And I've spoken to my mum about this actually, and I've been like, I'm not like having a go at you because it's okay now, but you do realise that was a big part of why I didn't come out, because you kind of were saying these things. But yeah, I think I was just, because I used to have really bad anxiety anyway and care what people thought about me, so I think that being gay on top of that, kind of, I felt really embarrassed and scared to tell people. I think that's what it was.
How old were you when you came out?
I was 17, I think. Yeah, about 17.
And so, like, how long had it been of kind of coming to terms with that?
I think I probably started realising when I was like 12, 13, maybe. Like, really being like, hang on a minute. I remember waking up one morning and being like, oh, like, I'm gay.
That was because you had a dream. Who was the dream about?
The dream was about, I've forgotten the actress's name, but it's, Alex from Orange is the New Black.
Oh, yeah, classic.
I had a dream about her where I was kissing her, and then I woke up and I was like, wait, oh my god, I'm gay. That was it.
I just said I was bisexual from the day that I thought I was kind of free.
Okay.
And like I was like 15. But to be honest, I didn't find the whole coming out process traumatic at all, because I just didn't really care what people's reaction to it was. I was like, well, you're not in my head, so it doesn't really matter what you think. But I think what I found really like genuinely traumatic was realizing how different my life was going to be. because like again, like I grew up in Southern Ireland, like it's a very religious environment. Like my parents are obviously straight and like married and so in love, and like I had this whole image when I was a kid of like, okay, so you go to university, you get a job, you meet a boyfriend, you get married, and you have lots of sex and babies. And then I became really obsessed with have you seen that TV show? It's like where the guy Say Yes to the Dress, and the guy like picks everything. I became so obsessed with Say Yes to the Dress. I don't know why. I think it was my way of coping of like, this is never gonna happen to me.
Hey, you did too. I love Say Yes to the Dress.
Yeah, it's actually like it's and I got so into these wedding shows, and then that's how I came out to my mum. It was like 9 p.m. one night. She's like lying in bed reading a book, and I came into her room really intensely, and I was like, "Do you know why I've been watching so much Say Yes to the Dress?" And she was like, "What? Hello? No." And I was like, "Well, it's because I don't think I'll ever marry a man." And I just walked out and closed the door. We talked about it again for another like 2 months. And she was like, remember when you said that thing? I was like, yeah, low-key. I don't know what was going on there, but and now whenever I watch Say Yes to the Dress, I'm like, oh, little baby gay, like, that's so cute.
So cute. The makeup was. Like,
yeah, I know.
Or at least like it's a little Easter egg. It's like, oh, we'll figure it out. What is that?
And I never came up to my dad. I think
me neither.
My mum just told him. I was like, I don't want to have that conversation with you.
I've literally never talked to my dad about being gay, ever.
I think something about being like a little girl, like you know what I mean,
yeah.
like their little girl. It's like, I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah. So were they like supportive?
My mum's really supportive. My dad wasn't, to be honest. My dad thought it was like a phase, and he was like, it's not even worth thinking about. It's not worth talking about. Like, she's obviously not going to marry a woman or something. This is just some weird thing that she can just deal with, and then, you know, I'll never have to think about it. And then we never really spoke about it. I was with my ex-girlfriend for a really long time, and my parents never met her. And I think it was kind of intentional for my dad, to be honest. I think he just thought like, oh, she'll have one girlfriend and she'll go back to men. And then my little sister came out as like a trans lesbian. And so my parents were like, okay, fuck, we're gonna step up in terms of the pride parent awareness, you know. And so ever since then, to be honest, like her coming out really helped my parents. Like they really like educate themselves. My mum was always really open-minded. She just didn't know how to speak about it. She didn't have any gay friends. She didn't, you know, especially not like lesbian friends. So yeah, now they're like the most, like, you know, they'll buy pride t-shirts. They're so supportive. But originally, no. I mean, my dad's Catholic, like, you know.
What about you, Dani?
Like with my parents?
Yeah,
I mean, I came out when I was like 17, and I was in the car. I was driving my mum somewhere, and she was talking about her friends. She has a friend who's, I think it was like their daughter was bi or their son was bi or something, and I was just like, what would you say if I was? And she was like, you're not, are you? And I was like, yeah. And she was like, oh, okay. And it was kind of fine. And then, yeah, she just told my dad. They've always been like I said, I've never talked to my dad about it, but he's always been, like, I know that he doesn't have a problem with it. Like, he's always just been, like, there for me from a distance with that kind of thing. Whereas, like, my mum, it took her a while to come to terms with it because we were very close. And she was kind of, I think, like you said, like, figuring out how to actually talk about it and know, like, how she should act. But then I think once she did, it's been, like, she's very cool with it. And also, like when I was home at Easter, she was asking me and my brother something about, like, trans people, and we were, like, having an open conversation with it. So she's now very, like, open to the idea of, like, talking about things and, like, figuring out what the right thing is to say. So, yeah, in general, she's very supportive with that.
That's good.
Yeah, it's good.
My brother was like, yes, now we can talk about girls.
Oh, that's so cute. No, I actually, that's like literally the same conversation with my mom. We were talking about Maria dating her ex, and she was like, oh, so is Maria like gay or bi? I was like, oh, she's bi. And she was like, what about you? I was like, yeah, I'm bi. And she was like, cool.
Oh my god.
Like a week later, I was like, by the way, I have a girlfriend.
I love that conversation when you're younger and you say to your parents, like, yeah, that my friend XYZ, like, they're not actually my friend. Like, I'll never get to do that again. You know what I mean? Like, that was so deep in the plot. Like,
so
that
dramatic.
Was so good. Yeah.
Oh, Lord.
But yeah, what about like after you came out? Because you said you didn't really find it like traumatic or anything, but Dani and Emily, did you like, what was like the process of kind of like figuring out your sexuality in your own terms,
like after coming out?
Yeah.
Or like, yeah, I don't know, like I think similarly I think I said I'm bi because I didn't really know what to call it, but it was because I had feelings for a girl, and then I entered into a relationship very quickly after that with a girl, so it was like it was all kind of like through that relationship that I sort of figured out how I felt about my sexuality. So that was quite it was like a 3-year relationship, and so throughout that I was like, I'm a lesbian, because I never thought about men throughout like that entire time. Yeah. And then it wasn't until we broke up that I was like, maybe I am bi, and like maybe I would like to date men. So it's kind of similar to what you were saying, like it's very much like who you know and who you're attracted to, like in situations, and then that's kind of like how I've always figured out my sexuality.
Yeah, I was thinking recently, like one of the reasons why I think so many more people now are coming out as bi than within like older generations is also just because like online, like you see so many different people that you would have just never seen ever. Do you know what I mean? Like especially like androgynous people, or people using, or people like playing with gender. That would be so confusing. Like looking back on it, for most people who are our age, who are queer, there's some kind of experience of like seeing a celebrity or like someone on a TV show or something. Just about like labels in general. I felt the first time that I ever introduced myself to someone who hadn't known me before and like didn't know me in my life as a lesbian, I like that was a type of euphoria I'd never felt in my entire life before. So then like when it comes to now like questioning whether that's still right and stuff, I get so upset at the idea that I wouldn't be a lesbian. Like I wouldn't be able to be like do you know what I mean? That just feels so right, even if maybe at the time for someone like I'm attracted to, it's not. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I know what you mean. I prefer that label. Like I prefer the word lesbian to bisexual.
But how do you introduce yourself to people?
I'd probably say bi, just because that's kind of, like I have dated men like since being in that long-term relationship, and so I kind of was like, oh, I'm bi, and so then it was like it kind of gets, you don't want to keep changing what you're saying, so I'd probably say bi, but also sometimes I just say like queer or like I don't know, because I'm like, I don't even know what label I want to assign to it.
Yeah.
What would you say?
I usually say bi, but like it's so rare that I have to come out to someone new. Like even with Owen, like when we first met him, this guy on our course, he was just like, well, you're obviously queer. Like
his gaydar is weird,
and that was so like real. Yeah, his gaydar is questionable.
Yeah, like he thought our very obviously gay lecturer was straight, and he was just convinced. He was like, no, he's so straight, and then like obviously he had a husband, and we were like
no, but it was so like reaffirming for me, because I feel like I don't know, I always feel like I'm like too like straight presenting for some reason, so I always think that people just assume I'm straight, but then I guess people don't. I don't know. I do think since I bleached my hair, I look more gay, but anyway, that's irrelevant.
That's true.
But I usually say bi if people ask, which they never do. What about you, Emily?
Say gay, because like I've dated more men than I've dated women, and I have been attracted to men in the past, but I just like women so much more. I know I'll never end up with a man, there's no way, so I just say gay, because you know I just know I won't be with a man again. So
Cassie, sometimes you say that, like you say lesbian because it most accurately like describes what is most likely to happen.
Yeah, so essentially like my crisis recently that I had was just basically I realised that like there are certain trans men that I'm attracted to, which means that by definition I'm not a lesbian. Even though like there are lesbians who like date trans men and stuff, like I just wouldn't feel comfortable if I was like in a relationship with someone who was a trans guy and still identifying as a lesbian or having people know me as a lesbian. But that's by the by, because that's no longer a concern.
But why is that? Because you feel like it would like not like reaffirm them, or like
it's for them to be honest, right? But also like at the end of the day, I use lesbian because it is like a predictor, because like I've dated one trans guy out of however many women in my life, so it feels stupid to like identify myself around the possibility that I could end up with like a very specific person. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's fine.
Because like you want to affirm someone within your sexuality, but at the end of the day, like the most likely thing is that I'm going to end up with a woman. So if I meet someone, I don't want to say, oh, I'm bisexual, because there's a 1% chance that I could end up with a man. It's like, no, like obviously within the community that I feel like I would fit into the most is amongst lesbians.
Yeah. What about, like, what do you think it would take for you to, like, start saying you're lesbian? Like, what's, like, the barrier there?
I don't know. I think it's almost, maybe it is that compulsory heterosexuality thing, like you were saying, like, oh, but like if a man was right, then maybe. But the reality is that I've never had a serious relationship with a man, and I don't think I would. And when you were saying like the idea of coming home to a man after a long day, I'm like, that is so heinous.
Yeah.
So, like,
It's
maybe I am a lesbian. Coming out.
Well, see, this is the thing. That was like a real, like, fully, congratulations, we welcome.
This is actually my coming out story.
But that was like the full realization that I had of like, everyone has this idea of like, there's always someone. Realistically, anyone of any sexuality, there's always someone who can make you twist your ideas, or you know, your sexuality is in some way, like we were saying, dependent on who you know and who you've been introduced to. But like, it's not. Straight women don't define themselves by like bisexual just purely because of the fact that there is maybe one woman who could change me.
Yeah.
So like, why do
So
so
true.
many queer women do that?
Yeah.
Like, if there hasn't been a man yet who's made you be like, yeah, 100%, I can see myself being with a man for the rest of your life, then why would you base your whole sexuality around it?
Yeah.
Do you know?
I think it is like you were saying to me earlier, like, I think that I have the capacity to be sexually attracted to men, but maybe not romantically interested in men. And so I'm like, realistically, I don't want to be in a relationship with a man, but I think the idea that like technically I'm bisexual, I think that always just made me be like, oh, I guess I'm bi. But yeah, I don't know. It's so hard to like it down.
Like in a way, like frees you up to be able to like shag men if it just so happens.
I mean, obviously not now.
Yeah.
Hopefully not, anyway. It's weird because I'm like the kind of the opposite. Like, I don't think I would ever be like ever like really enjoy sex with a man, but I've been romantically attracted to men and had crushes on men and had feelings for men, which is really weird, but I just can't ever, I would never want to have sex with a man. So, you know what I mean? But this is why I'm just gay, because I just would never.
But it is kind of crazy how like when you ask them what their sexuality is, you respond with like the sexual basis rather than. I'd really like if I met someone and they were like, listen, like, I'm bisexual but I'm homoromantic, because I feel like then if you were a man and that was a woman saying that, you could be like, oh, sick, so like maybe you would have sex with me, but like I'm not going to catch feelings because I know you're homoromantic. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But like people don't know about this like heteroromantic, like biromantic, like the romantic shit. Like at all. I remember I only found out about it like when I like had a group of like fully queer friends at like Brown University in a poetry camp. Like, do you know what I mean? Like the most liberal people you're gonna find. So like, and that's like the only time I've ever like heard about it and like people talking about it, because like some of the people were there were like, yeah, I feel like I could be like biromantic but like homosexual or whatever, you know, like whatever it was. And if we just like normalize that a lot more, because I also feel like there's this whole thing of like so many women that like would shag other women but they would never date them. So then it's like, okay, yeah, you like that, maybe you're just like bisexual but like you're heteroromantic, you know. But like I don't know, it's also kind of counterintuitive, because then the whole like labels question is like, are they helpful or are they just like putting people into a box? Like at the end of the day it doesn't really matter, but I do feel like it could be helpful to be like, yeah, but that's a thing, like, you know, like your sexual attraction doesn't necessarily like match your romantic attraction. And that's like normal.
Yeah, I do think it depends on the person as well, because like you're saying you love the word lesbian, like you love the label, whereas I feel like I've reached such a stage of like, I don't know, like I'm kind of scared of all the labels. I don't really know which one's like right now.
Because I think it's how you view it, because it's not like, I don't see it as like a tattoo that you have for the rest of your life, you know. It's like, this is what matches me for the moment, and if I meet that one person that does make me reconsider, then I'll just reconsider, you know. Like, come out once, I can do it again. And like, even with my whole process of coming out, it wasn't like a one big day I told everyone that I knew. It was more just, I kind of started telling people that like, yeah, I kind of like girls, and then it just progressed and progressed and progressed, like through conversations. And then one day I was kind of like, yeah, shit, I think I'll only be with girls, you know, and like, yeah, I'm probably a lesbian, and like, you kind of deal with it more openly with people, but still using the labels, you know.
Yeah.
I totally get when people don't individually want labels or care about labels, but like I think labels serve like such a huge purpose. Like, it's how you find community and like shared experience, and like also it is like the word, like something you can like relate to and see yourself in, you know.
How much of your kind of understanding of your sexuality has come from like your friends and stuff rather than the people you're attracted to?
I don't know, because I actually, when I was at school, and then because I went to uni in Exeter, like Jersey and Exeter are very straight places, so it was like I didn't really know anyone gay at school, and then I was in my relationship and we were like the only like gay people. And then when I was at Exeter, I knew a few bi girls, but it wasn't like a big queer community, and so this has kind of been the first time where I've like had a lot of queer or like non-straight friends, and so I think that does actually help you kind of figure out your identity a bit more. Like it's actually kind of weird when you're the only one, because then you're a bit like, I feel like straight people, they don't understand the nuances in the way that, like, that sounds weird, but it's like they just kind of don't understand it in the way that queer people do.
Yeah.
So they like see you date someone and they're like, oh, like this is you now, or they kind of just make their own assumptions. Like after I ended my 3-year relationship with a girl, and then I dated a couple of men, and one of my friends was like, oh, so like, do you think you'll ever like go back to women? And I was like, yeah. I was like, I'm not mostly like into women. I was like, this is a
hiatus.
phase. I think they kind of like, they see it very much like, what are you doing right now? That's your sexuality.
Yeah.
What about you, Emily?
Yeah, I mean, all my friends are gay. Literally all of them. I think I have one straight friend. And that's mainly because I did women's rugby at uni, and that's where all my friends came from, and most of them are gay. I think, yeah, I don't know. I think it's like a whole kind of culture within your friendship group, isn't it? I think that I'm not saying I wouldn't be friends with a straight person. Obviously not. Of course I would, but it's not. I would. I don't think I would like just vibe with them anywhere near as much as I would with a queer person. You know, I would feel maybe slightly uncomfortable if like I was in a room of straight people and like, do you know what I mean? And I was the only queer one. I don't know. Yeah, I think that it helped me come out. I came out properly, like 100% when I was at uni, and that it helped having lots of gay friends around me, and it made me just so comfortable. And I honestly wouldn't want it to change. Like I like surrounding myself with gay people, and that's why all my friends, I think, are. It's not like I've chosen it on purpose, but that you kind of, like you said before, gravitate towards each other, kind of thing.
Yeah. I went from having zero gay friends, apart from like 1 or 2 who were still kind of under wraps in Ireland, to then going to uni in Manchester, and everybody I knew was gay. Literally, like, turn a corner and there's a gay person. Like, you could smell each other out. They were everywhere, and my whole friendship group was gay, and that was like so exciting. As like like talks that you have about boys when you're younger, and it's so exciting, and like, oh my god, like he texted me and stuff. And then I had that same feeling when I was like 18, and it was like another part of girlhood that I never knew about. Like, it was another way of like, oh my god, like being so excited, like about like shared heartbreaks and stuff. Because like in secondary school, all stuff with girls was kind of under wraps and kind of secretive because of all the religion and everything. And then it was so liberating to like move to a big city, and it was just so normal.
If you could like say, this is such a like cheesy question, but if you could say something to like your like baby gay self, what would you tell them? Or like anyone who's like listening to this that's like kind of questioning, what would you want them to know?
It's gonna be really bad.
Okay.
Like, as in like, that sounds so bad. I don't mean as in like society, I don't mean anything like that. I mean like heartache. Like your first sapphic breakup. Like, I can't explain this to straight people because like I've had straight breakups. It's not the same thing. Like, there is a certain way of like how I feel, in my experience, like women relate to each other and speak to each other, and the relationship you create that is just so detrimental. Like, my first breakup nearly put me on a psych ward. It was horrific, and like I was not prepared for that as a baby gay, because I thought I'd feel the same as I had about like breakups with men, where I just didn't give a flying fuck. But it was not like that at all. At all. So that's what I would be like, prepare yourself. Because I thought like, women love each other, women are so nice, this will be so easy. No. It's so wrong. So wrong.
I think I would say, because I think something that I was scared about growing up was that if people knew that I liked women, that they'd see me as masculine, and I kind of had this thing in my head. And I think as well because like when I was in school, like I was a bit taller and had a deeper voice, and so like I don't know, I just felt like people saw me as like more masculine, even though like I've never really presented that way. So I think I would say to myself like your sexuality doesn't have anything to do with that, and like you can be really feminine and still be queer, or like you could experiment with like presenting yourself in different ways, and it doesn't mean that people are just going to see you that way forever.
Yeah.
I think I'd just be like, oh, this is cringe, but I'd just be like, relax, like it's all right, it's not a big deal, like, you know what I mean? Because for me, it kind of felt like almost the end of the world, like when I realised I was gay or whatever, when I was young. I'd just say to myself or to anyone, I'd just be like, it's fine, like just chill.
I have a question for the panel. Did you ever, like, realising you were gay, like, did you ever feel the need to present more masculine to kind of, like, prove to other people? Because I went through a dark phase, a really deep dark phase, and, like, I've got a masculine head. It did not suit me at all. It did not. I looked like Boo out of Orange is the New Black. Like, it was rough. It was a really rough time, and I'm glad I came out of it. But it was just, like, in my head, I was like, that's how lesbians look. And then you know, it wasn't until after meeting feminine lesbians that I was like, oh, okay, I don't actually have to do that. Thank Christ.
Not really like masculine. I think I was, like I said, I was kind of scared, so I went like the other way. But maybe sometimes I dress kind of quirky because I was like, gay people dress quirky. Maybe that was kind of how I like tried to present it without really.
And you're not wrong.
Yeah,
like, that's so
gay people
correct.
dress quirky.
Yeah.
I feel like I still have that of like, it depends where I'm going and who I'm seeing. Like, oh, I think I look too gay right now, or I look too straight right now. Like, and I don't want to look like this.
Yeah.
For like when I cut my hair last summer, I had such an identity crisis. I was like, I look so gay and I can't escape it. Like, there's nothing to hide behind. Yeah,
that's kind of interesting. Stressful. Why would you not want to look gay? I'm like, I want to do everything I can.
No, I was just like, because I feel like hair is such a big, like, if you cut it, it's like you can't do anything about it, whereas clothes you can change like whenever you want. But because I was just waiting for my hair to grow out, I was like, oh my god, everyone's gonna know, as if I don't have a sex relationships podcast. Like,
oh my god.
Anyway. Yeah, you're kind of letting all the information out there anyway.
No, I had it the other way because I feel like people don't assume that I'm gay just by looking at me. Like sometimes people are like, oh my god, I would have had no idea that you date women, and I'm like,
I hate when people say that.
When I went on my first date with Emily, I FaceTimed my brother and I was like, do I look gay enough? Like, is she gonna think I'm straight? Even though we literally kissed the night before. So I'm always like, oh, do people think I look straight?
Yeah,
because I dress feminine.
Yeah,
like a bit of a crisis with that, don't I?
No, yeah, I feel that.
I got a really traumatizing mullet last year, and I've never looked so gay in my entire life. Like, it was so short. Like, it was a real mullet, like 1970s footballer type of mullet, like not like a cute little 2023 mullet. And it was really like it was the first time in my life that I felt I looked so intensely gay, and I did not enjoy it. I mean, it was nothing to do looking masculine, to be honest, because like I was still kind of dressing the same, so I didn't really look that masculine. But it was just an awful haircut on me. I'm not sure if it was connected to gay or not. But normally I will do anything I can to try and look gay, because I feel like it's just like, I don't know, it feels correct, you know?
What are the things that you think make you look gay? Yeah.
Which is so funny, you know. I was explaining that to my mum recently, and now rings and jewellery is like a gay thing.
Yeah.
And she was like, that's weird, it's just very cumbersome. And then I was thinking about it, and I was like, actually, thinking about it, lesbians should be the last people wearing rings, because it's extremely cumbersome.
I always think
like,
that.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I want to get to know anyone, and I've got to be like, 5 minutes, please.
These are big rings as well.
Yeah, and like nice. All of this is I'm going to take out, and like, all of this. It's a lot of work, you know.
I remember one of the first times I got fingered and like the person was wearing rings, and I was like, are you not scared that they're gonna get like lost in and they're like, no, but like, can you feel them? And I was like, to be honest, no. They're like, I guess it's fine then.
Yeah, I've never fingered someone with these rings on.
I mean, those are big. Like, I think it depends how big the rings are.
I do some harm. Those would be fine.
These are fine.
Yeah. Yeah, but see, those I wouldn't be like, those are gay rings.
No, they're straight girl rings, really.
Yeah. But how weird is it that people can just tell? Because I don't think straight people have that filter of like, this is gay or this is straight. Because in my head, when I wear Doc Martens, it's gay.
Yeah.
But if a straight person wears Doc Martens, it's straight. Yeah. And I can't explain why that's the case. But it just is, and other gay people know it too.
Yeah.
You know?
I think it's because there's something gay about
because...
Doc Martens.
Yeah.
But then straight people wear them anyway.
Yeah, the straights like need to get to know. That's the thing. It's like the gays know and the straights just need to get to know. Because we're like aware of all these little things that they're just not aware of. No, wait, but back to the feminine presenting and like masculine presenting thing. Like I remember when I was like first coming out and like realizing I was bi or whatever, being so into like the lesbian community on YouTube. Like I literally knew everything about all of those lesbians' lives, and like there it was like a group of like, you know, there were like loads of like butch looking women and like loads of like femme looking women, and like to me that was like an introduction into like, oh yeah, literally lesbians can look like anything.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know why, like I had such a like deep idea of like, oh, this is what a lesbian looks like, but like, yeah, I don't know, and that was like really affirming to me, at least like when I was like coming out and like realizing like my gayness, because I was like, oh yeah, like I can be literally as feminine as I want, and that doesn't mean shit, you know.
Yeah. I feel like we get all of that realization so much earlier now because of like the internet.
Yeah.
Because imagine if we had grown up with no access to the internet or anything. Like imagine what your idea of what a lesbian would be. I don't know any like older lesbians or anything when I was younger. Like I'd have no picture of what that's supposed to look like.
Yeah.
That is scary that people had to do it without the internet.
But that must be like why the straights don't know, because they're not on like the on queer TikTok or anything. They must just see like other straight people and think that that's like what everyone looks like. Terrifying.
They just see straight people and they just think everyone's straight.
Yeah, low key. Because have you ever seen like a straight person's For You page?
Oh my god, I imagine that's scary.
I feel like that would be dystopian. Do you know what I mean? Like, I would never encounter that.
Yeah.
Does it ever glitch and you get like a straight video and you're like, whoa, I get
Yeah.
Oh my god,
It's like when my boyfriend gets out of the shower and I'm like, ah!
Swipe as quickly as
Yeah,
keep coming back.
Yeah.
You know, I had this realization recently because I saw someone like doing a parody of like male thirst traps, and I saw it and I was like, I don't get the joke, and I was like, fuck, I've never seen a male thirst trap in my entire life. Like that would just never come up for me.
It's not in your vocabulary. Yeah. Okay, well, I feel like that's a good place to wrap up. Okay, well, thank you so much to all our lovely guests for joining us and sharing your experiences. We hope you guys found this helpful, interesting in some way. And to all our lesbian listeners, happy Lesbian Visibility Week. We hope you are the most visible you've ever been. Wear so much pink and white and orange.
Yeah, and keep spreading that lesbian agenda.
Yeah, definitely. And we'll be back hopefully with more queer content because it's nearly Pride Month, or like soonish. So obviously stay tuned, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, join our Patreon if you want to watch the video. And you can find us on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook at Sextras Podcast, or on our website, sextraspodcast.com. And yeah, we'll see you very soon.
Yeah, bye.
You've been listening to Sextras, presented by Honey Jane Wyatt and Maria Jose Hayodatiyi, produced by Mabel Productions.